think about today building a company for an opportunity that is 5 years from now.
Yeah,
Like it is eroding.
so you need to build a leadership team around you. And so what we did is creating business units with a clear leadership, clear ownership.
We are like pre-garage.
So
Even
the garage was like the evolution.
Yeah, it would have been an upgrade. I mean, I would have loved the garage, you know?
Now we need to make decisions. Please make decisions. And then you look around and nobody's making decisions. And you say, what's wrong?
What you should want is for whatever you created to continue for a very long time. And for that to happen, you know, you need to trust whoever comes in and really give that someone the best chance. Hello, my name is Andrea Giannangelo. And 15 years ago, I founded a company, and the company is called iubenda.
Hello, my name is Manuel Heilmann, and I'm the CEO of iubenda. Lucky to be the successor of Andrea, who founded the company 15 years ago, and I took over 15 years later. And today we're going to have a conversation that I think every founder needs to have and needs to hear before the company is ready to scale. As a company scales, what do you think is the most important element that should be preserved, that really comes, or that was established in the early days of a company?
Yeah, so I think it's kind of, I mean, you can call it many ways. You know, I like to call it kind of the soul of the company, which is a mix of like people that have been there for a long time and way of doing things, and that is kind of the intangible. And since it's such a, you know, it's kind of, it's in a gaseous form. Like you open the bottle, it escapes. You know, like it's something that I think is almost, there's not really a lot of technique to preserving it. And I think try to keep that. It's like, you know, kind of tending this fire that ultimately gives the warmth of the company. Otherwise, you know, every company becomes kind of a replaceable entity, you know, like what is really different. And ultimately it's that mix of community and people and way of doing things. You know, are people friends with each other? And like one thing that for instance I really treasure within iubenda is that so many colleagues are actually also friends, and you put them in the room and there is chemistry, you know, like there is chemistry as people and not just as co-workers. You know, there is something more than just the co-working relationship. And I think that is, and it was not even intentional. And like it's a way of, I mean, I've always really tried to create a community alongside creating the company. And that, you know, every person that you add, you know, you have that in the back of your head and then you try to preserve it. So I think that's that is one thing to, you know, that I think we have, and maybe not even every founder-led company has, you know, but that's for sure. I think as a founder, you know, the story that you tell obviously brings people together, you know, and that story element, that, you know, intangible element, it's something absolutely to try and further.
And what I noticed was, that was one of the first things I noticed when I came in, that there's chemistry between people who never met before. So when you bring them together, you know, have team get-togethers and they meet the first time, and you feel the chemistry, the friendship between people they never met before. How did you, because iubenda is an all remote or remote first or all remote company. How did you create such kind of chemistry or culture, and how did you preserve it? Because the company now is at 150 people, 150 remote people. Preserving that kind of culture, it's challenging. How did you do that?
So I think it is very difficult to describe because, as I said, it's not really a technique, but I think it's a lot of micro decisions. You know, it's about, first of all, valuing people, no? It's also preserving certain, let's say, almost repeaters, you know, like key people that are spread out at key places that kind of are within that, within that skill thinking. And also ultimately, as you add people, look at people that, you know, those folks could be friends with, you know, And obviously, you need to combine that with the professionalism, but it's also because the thing, it's almost like, so many people that were not wrong, like they were good professionals, but they were not like the perfect fit. Simply the team did not accept them and they ultimately left. So after some time, then it is also self-replicating in a way, and also it's self-protecting. It has kind of these antibodies, where people that are not liked, they will be pushed out, there. And this happens so many times, and sometimes it is not exactly, ideal, because it can create kind of also situations where, okay, no, I really needed that professional.
Right.
But yeah, then ultimately that's, kind of preserve this intangible entity somehow.
Yeah, it makes iubenda unique. And I can feel it when interviewing people. It is rare, that kind of culture, so it's special. What do you think? Where does a founder still add value during the transition process?
Yeah, so it's a difficult one because I think the team wants to demonstrate that they don't need me anymore, and I see that like in many levels, and it's not really about you; it's really about the team. Like once you're no longer there, it's like almost with a parent. Like you, at some point,
Decoupling process.
yeah. Like once you leave the house, like. Then you don't want to, you detach a lot, like, and you also don't want the intrusion anymore. No. So that's, so there is a little bit of that, and, but, obviously, usually, like when the founder goes back, it's because something went horribly wrong and like things are collapsing. Okay, so we bring him back, the founder, kind of Steve Jobs kind of thing. So hopefully we don't get to that.
And what do you think during the transition process? So, there's this decoupling process with a team, but what do you think, where do you see an area where the founder can still add value, also to the successor? So our case was me, but also to the other leadership team members.
Yeah, obviously the founder, as the history, no? So trying to, to share that in a way and to kind of share the perspective. And that is one part. And then the other part is the vision, obviously, like keeping that channel of, okay, how do I see the future, and, especially when it's a matter of making a breaking change in a way, like when there is like a moment of, okay, you could go in any direction and you need to, break a few bones to grow further. What is the direction that we pick? And I think that is not, it's the difference ultimately that makes an entrepreneur, which is, okay, how good are you in making decisions when there is scarcity of information? Because everyone is good at making decision when perfect information is there. The art is making a decision where you don't have all of the data. And business is a lot about that, and that's the art of making business, is actually in that span of uncertainty.
Right. That is true. So true. What do you think? What are the behaviors and values that usually erode first when a company scales?
Well, I think obviously you start from the garage and you organize things.
Did you really start from a garage?
Well, me and Mimo, iubenda's co-founder, met at my house the first time. My house will be my room in my shared apartment. Like
so sort of.
So yeah. So I think we didn't even have the garage because we were working from our own rooms, and Mimo was in the same situation. So I would say we are like pre-garage. Like
the garage was like the evolution.
Yeah, it would have been an upgrade. I would have loved the garage, like totally. But no, I think at some point discipline might enter the garage, because obviously you organize things in a way that fits a group of like 5. And we were I think we got to 5 after like probably 3-4 years. It took a long time. Like it was very slow. I mean, there was no market for what we did for a very long time. Like, I mean, we, the first breaking point, I mean, we started in 2010, 2011, we were incorporated, and the cookie law was in 2015. It's 4 years. It's a very long time. Like, like a lot of just, okay, like, like we think there is an opportunity, but think about today building a company for an opportunity that is 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Like it is eroding, like that is already an erosion. But then, as things started to come up and come together, then obviously we had to change. And I think I've always been passionate, maybe compared to other founders that I see, I've always been passionate about organization, like about like the organization, about tuning the organization. Okay, so I always was pretty intentional in trying to organize the team better. I also like to be organized, and organization is kind of like something that I'm passionate about. And also one thing that we did very early compared to pretty much every founder that I know is to bring in a head of HR, and to really, because I mean, my thinking was, okay, obviously it was a big cost for us at the time to get a head of HR, but my thinking was, okay, like maybe this adds, I don't know, 5% to the cost of the company. But if that person can, improve by, 10%, how good the people that we hire are, or how productive we are internally, that's a decision that is kind of, makes itself, But surprisingly, so many founders don't prioritize its HR until very, very late. Like, and I've spoken to so many founders where it's like, hey, hire the HR, like so important. But it felt as like kind of a non-accretive investment, kind of like not a leverage investment. Instead, it's like one of the most high leverage investment is HR.
Yeah, it feels like a discretionary investment at the beginning.
Yeah, and I did that quite. I mean, not super early, but pretty early, and before I was really doing it myself, but in a way that was really, I did a lot myself. I structured it. So I think probably looking back, the HR focus was critical. Besides obviously getting project management in, but even for sure we had more HR structure early than we had, for instance, project management structure. And I don't know if that's a mistake. But in our case, maybe this is produced the culture that we have also potentially.
How do founders stay close to the business without becoming a bottleneck after the transition or during the transition?
Okay, so I think you need to have a certain maturity, also kind of emotional maturity in a way, because it's easy to get bickery and tangled, and also personal, because obviously everything that happened up until that point is the reflection of your decisions, no? And I think you need to be humble in understanding that not all of it is necessarily the best, and also in a way also appreciate, and that's really the way that I see it, really appreciate that there are different ways to do things, and there is not a single way that is right, and that different people bring different styles, and different styles mean different priorities, different ways of organizing things, and you must be okay with that. And I think if you're, it's not just a matter of, okay, I need to be okay with that because it's the right thing to do as personally, but I think it's also a great angle for the company to kind of reignite innovation, do a bit of a reset. I think also what I see is that you were able also to create a bit of a reset organizationally, which, I think if I had made your same decision, it would not have been as effective, because ultimately people were kind of, it's also like having a long-term relationship, like there are certain with another human being, or with multiple ones, like you at some point you go into a scheme that is self-repeating, and it's very difficult to unhinge. And I think the fact that someone new comes in gives an opportunity for a reset that is an opportunity that I think as someone that is really living that role and still cares about the ultimate outcome of it needs to appreciate.
Yeah, and if I may add, I mean, I can say it now, but I mean, I was warned when I joined the company. People told me it's gonna be rough for the first couple, 4 to 6 weeks. And then I was waiting 4 weeks, 6 weeks, nothing happened. I mean, you were pretty chill, had some question, good conversations, and so yeah, actually, you handled it really well, and it's really good to always have someone when needed that I can call and just ask.
Yeah, I think if I can add, no, I think it's a matter of not being possessive, and I think if it's a lot like, I mean, it really relates maybe to a relationship with with the relative, or either way, because like if you want the best of that thing and or that someone, you need to let go, and you need to let it live its own thing. And I think as a founder, if you want your I think what you should want is for whatever you created to continue for a very long time, no? And if for that to happen, you need to trust whoever comes in and really give that someone the best chance. If you're constantly questioning and sabotaging, etc., like that is a great way that then the company is going to continue to depend on you, whether it's your opinion or your support, or that's kind of what you're communicating in a way. And I think that's ultimately, it just doesn't go in a way that I think you should want.
No, it's true. Based on your experience and based on what you're seeing now at Iubenda, because you're still very close to Iubenda as a board member, what should never be delegated, even when business scales?
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously, different people delegate different things, because obviously everyone gravitates towards, around their expertise, no? But I think it's a matter of, while delegating, also keeping kind of a probing approach, where you stay high level, but then you also go deep, because otherwise the risk is that you start to get a story from the team, and that story you need to constantly challenge it in a way. Like delegating doesn't mean detaching, in my opinion. Like I think that the risk is that you, as you delegate, then you start to kind of like it's not your problem anymore in a way. And but ultimately it rolls downhill, so like,
What's your problem?
what rolls.
Yeah, so setting guardrails. I think it's important setting guardrails so you don't get, so people know the boundaries for the decision making, and then you avoid surprises. Not always, but in most cases, yeah. But a good point. How do you recognize when scale is improving the company versus slowly diluting it or eroding it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I saw that on myself as well, because we scaled the company a lot before making this change, so I scaled a good part of it. And I think the problem is that you add people, you add structure, you add things, and ultimately you're only adding overhead, and you're not really moving the needle in any form really appreciable. And I think, I mean, that's the problem probably of every single business operator, where, okay, you're making this investment and you think that it's going to bring something, of a delta, and then it doesn't, you're left with the cost, so I think that's probably that the nemesis of every of every scaling process, especially once you add like one thing that worked, and you're trying to to find more ones. At the same time, though, I think when it comes to, I think one piece of wisdom is also that as you grow the organization, I think there should be always a sense of, and maybe going back to the culture and kind of the soul of it, but there should always be a sense for adding so that you provide relief and not add, add complexity, add more ways for people to be busy, or simply add stuff, because it's very easy to add stuff and say, okay, we have this new person, we're gonna do more, while I think it's underappreciated to add this person so that we can do better the same things, and I think that's, especially looking at the team, it's always a bit of giving for granted who is stretching and who is pushing. I think you did that a lot, actually. I think maybe you can be a better example of the things that you did, than I did.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, it's and that is a challenging part, but it's even more challenging in an all remote company. And I keep saying that, being all remote, because people tell me, oh, how can you do that? And it's tough. And no, we went back to physical office, so much easier working together. And I said, look, I had companies with physical offices. We had a lot of challenges that I'm not dealing with at all. Yes, I'm dealing with different challenges. And, one of these challenges is, kind of identifying the people who go the extra mile, making sure they stay happy. It's a lot easier when you have a physical office. It's a lot harder when you're all remote. But yeah, it's true.
And I think also probably that's one of the hardest things, typically for founders, which is, okay, you had one thing that worked, and that one thing propelled you, to your success. And not so many founders, because I think iubenda's story was atypical in a way, because we went through so many phases, so many legislations, so many years. So we had to reinvent ourselves a few times. But what I see typically in other founders is that they had that one thing that worked, and then finding another one is extremely difficult. And also, you never had to face that until very late, and you think you're invincible because you think that you can work everything out, and you've never really experienced, like, okay, yeah, I tried to do something and it doesn't work, like. And it's not because you are perfect and you don't fail once. It's actually because you had a very long stretch already, and like your next growth cycle is actually gonna have to come from something else that you're not really sure whether you're gonna be able to figure out, or maybe it's gonna take you 10 attempts, and you think instead that you can one shot, every single one. So I think it gives you like that hubris, which I see in a lot of founders, and I think it's like, yeah, sure. Like, okay, I'll see you there. Yeah.
From today's perspective, what's something you did too much in the early days of iubenda that you would like, that you would pull back today?
Yeah, I think one thing that I've learned over the years is really to fight back on being too busy, because that's where you start to lose your capability to think. You really need, because it's obviously, being a founder means that at the beginning you start, you start and you're doing everything, and that is gonna make for very long days. But make sure that you still preserve time to think, because that is the most important thing that you need to do. And I see so many founders that are just so busy. You have to delegate, get out of that, because it is not good for this kind of the long term, for the strategy, for the decision making that you have to make at the company.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
It's probably not just founders.
No, it's not. It's a constant struggle. Okay.
Because I think at some point we need to mention Team Blue, obviously, which was instrumental to you coming in, and also me also being able to say, bring iubenda into a new phase. So, and I'm curious to know, like, what it meant for you, but what it means for you, and what impact it made. But for me, it was obviously like a major decision, probably one of the most important decisions that I've made as a founder. And it was really about, okay, like the world is getting crowded, the space is getting crowded. And also at the time, literally, like the least funded company in the CMP space had like 30-40 million in the bank. So it's like, okay, we're bootstrapped. What are we gonna do? And at the same time, like, it was like, oh my God, like, even though we have such fewer resources, like, I mean, we are bootstrapped, so we have zero resources, like just our profits. We are in the top 3 in the market, and we are just, doing much better than most of these heavy founder companies at the end of the day. So how do I not screw it up? Like, how do I preserve this? Because there is such a risk that you miss the moment and you go into a spiral where you start to have, decreasing maybe metrics, so I had to really make a decision while things were such that we had options, and I couldn't push it too far. And I think that's probably, like one mistake that a lot of founders make is like they push past the really good moment. And the point is that you need to make this decision. Maybe it's raising funding, or maybe it's joining a group, Team Blue, etc. And you need to make it before you pass that moment in which then you start to not have enough resources, and then you go into downward spiral, So, and for us, Team Blue was kind of the best of various worlds, let's say, because it provided us with access to market because of all the clients of the group and of the structure, etc., and also widened our shoulders where we can say, okay, now we speak. Okay, you got 30-40 million in funding. I have a whole group that basically could fund us, to infinite, as long as the opportunity is good. So I don't even need to sell on promise. I can just fund the company based on what is needed, if it's needed. And ultimately we ended up still being continue to being so much more successful. So ultimately it was about again, I think all of my decisions, including that one and also this one with you coming in, all of these decisions kind of go back to trying to make the company last. Like, I think as a founder, that's what you should want. And I don't know if maybe some founders put their ego before their company's survival. I think maybe that's sometimes the case. But I think if that's what I try to think as, and that's kind of what led my decisions.
I totally see your perspective, and you're absolutely right. I've seen so many companies missing the point selling, and then it went downhill, and it became a fire sale at the end.
Sorry, it's not a matter of monetizing. It's more like, and you need to make the strategic move, which will then give you another step of growth, and it's about that. And then if you miss that with M&A or funding, etc., it's not coming back.
No, you end up with a private equity firm, and
it gets ugly for the team.
Exactly, yeah.
Because the founder, whatever, like the founder usually gets something. Things were going well and we were profitable, but the team gets the short stick.
Totally. No, and I think Team Blue, and then for me as a new CEO coming in, Team Blue was so helpful because they basically take over, or they help wherever, in all the areas where that just take a lot of time and resource that don't really add value to the business. Team Blue comes in and they help out. So there are a lot of things I don't have to worry about, like IT infrastructure. It doesn't add any value. It's not going to make us grow faster if we have to handle our own Microsoft or Google account or whatever. So they're helping us where it doesn't really add any value to the business, and we can just move faster than any independent company could, because they have to handle all these little details, where Team Blue just has this infrastructure, this back end that helps us a lot. And this is a good example here. Creating a podcast. I did a podcast before with my marketing team, finding the company, organizing everything, and then here we are, and we have the Team Blue podcast team flying in, recording the podcast. So that's a good example right here.
Okay, so some questions from me to you, Manuel. So the first one will be, when a company truly moves from founder-led to scale-led growth, what is the first thing that must change, or that you did change, whether a founder like me will like it or not?
Well, jokingly, You have to get rid of this monster account at email account where everything
A single account for everything.
a single account for everything. So that's a typical startup syndrome. Was a founder still running the show? No, joke aside, but it is true. But obviously, the structure is built around the founder, and of course, the founder has a very different background, different insights into the business, which is reflected on the structure of the company and also the people in the company. And so when there's a transition, the structure needs to go along with it, because whoever comes in doesn't have the same insights, brings in different experience, different background, but the structure needs to evolve. And that's something we did very fast in the process. And I was lucky enough to have a team around me where we were able to structure it accordingly. But it needs to happen fast.
So what is one thing that is acceptable in the early stages and then at scale really needs to stop?
Well, it's definitely the decision-making process, because as a founder, you start a business, you sweat through tough times sometimes. So you have different emotional attachment to the company, and you also make decisions differently. You have a different decision process. It's often centered around the founder. That obviously doesn't scale over time, and so that when there's someone else coming in, the decision process needs to evolve. People need to step up. People who maybe didn't have the authority to make decisions before, all of a sudden have the authority to make decisions and need to step up. So it's a process that takes time. It's also a process where the successor actually needs to learn to adjust, because it's not something that happens overnight. And I can speak from my own experience. You come in and you expect people to make decisions. Okay, Andrea is gone, or not gone. He's still at Team Blue, but gone as a CEO. And so now we need to
perfect health.
Now we need to make decisions. Please make decisions. And then you look around and nobody's making decisions. And you say, what's wrong? And so you, as a successor, you learn, okay, you have to be patient. You have to explain. You have to also set expectations. And this is a process that takes time, and it's a journey that you have to take together with a team. And but it's a big it's a major paradigm shift for the company.
And I mean, you spoke about decision making, no? And obviously, like when the founder is there, it's like there is a gravity towards what the founder says, what the decision that he makes, and maybe a lot of that is based on intuition or kind of a mix of having been there since the beginning.
Right.
So then, how do you substitute that, and what are maybe some risks of that, and how does then a transition maybe bring also some advantages, or also maybe some gaps as well?
As a founder, you make decisions, as you said, based on your intuition. I mean, you started the business based on an intuition. I mean, you don't have any metrics to work from.
Yeah.
So you start with an intuition. The whole thing starts with an intuition. And of course that, at some point, of course, you add metrics and KPIs and more data-driven decisions to the intuition, but the intuition remains. So whoever comes in brings some, general intuition, business acumen to the business, but doesn't have the insights into the business to make decisions based on intuition. So I would say as a founder, you kind of trust and you can answer that question as well, but you probably trust your gut more, and sometimes you don't, and so sometimes whoever comes in doesn't have that intuition, needs to trust more or needs to rely on metrics and numbers and data, which can be a challenge as well, because if you just rely on data and numbers and you completely leave out intuition, it's not good either. You have to find some middle ground, But it's definitely more, I would say it's more data-driven, metrics-driven, because you don't really have a choice as a successor. You don't have the same background information.
And what are some examples in ways that you structure the company further? There were some changes, and also like where do what were some of the examples of your thinking? What direction did you go?
So the first thing we did was structuring the company around business units. Because as a founder, you often have the direct impact on the go-to-market team. You work with the go-to-market team. You understand the market best. So when a successor comes in, that insight is missing, and so you need to build a leadership team around you. And so what we did is creating business units with a clear leadership, clear ownership, clear decision-making process. One for channels, one for self-service, and one for our enterprise team. And that helped actually to develop the team, but also to understand where the challenges are, where do we need to improve, where it's going well, because a successor alone could not have done it without this new structure, without this new leadership team structure. So that's one example. We did restructure our engineering and development team, moving product and development under one roof. That helped a lot to improve speed, decision making as well, and alignment between product engineering, but also alignment between engineering, product, and go-to-market, which can be a challenge. The more a company scales, the more a company grows. And then we made a couple of operational adjustments, but I would say those two were the major changes we made, go-to-market and engineering and product team. And so far, so good. But of course, it's a learning process, and we learn every day, and there are always, some setbacks, and then we need to adjust. So it's never done. It's never complete.
I think it's interesting to think about, okay, like as there is a transition, what is the way that a founder can actually, make things worse for the transition?
First of all, I think it's important for the successor to understand that, he or she is taking over from someone who has been in the business for a long time, and I think it's a privilege, and it's actually, it helps a lot when the predecessor is in the business, remains in the business for a while, helps with the transition, and I'm lucky you stay on board with Team Blue, because I can always ping you, I can always call you. It's definitely an advantage that a lot of successors don't have, whereas a predecessor just disappears. But of course, during the transition, it's also hard for the founder to let go, which I think needs to be, I think needs to be acknowledged, and I think it's important to set boundaries and to set, to set rules, but then also to not, just stay cool when the founder, occasionally puts a CEO hat back on. It happens. It's just, I mean, you have done it for 15 years. It's normal, so you can't just take it off overnight. So I think that's, one advice I can give to successors taking over from a founder. Just stay cool and take it. Appreciate that the predecessor is still around, and you have frequent conversations, and exchange the insights and get a common understanding.
So you talked about decision making before, and you talked about also making changes in the company to adapt to a different way to make decisions. Obviously, there is a certain efficiency in having the decisions more centralized around the founder, sometimes. And so how do you keep the efficiency and the speed of the decisions while still delegating at a greater extent, maybe, than in the founder-led business?
It's a process. It's a journey, and I wouldn't say we are where we need to be, because a lot of the decisions still come back to me. So it's not it's not where I think we need to be, and then sometimes I'm tempted to make a decision just to be fast, to be quick, when it would be smarter to actually delegate the decision. So it's an area where I need to remind myself again and again that you have to trust your people to make the decision, but then also empower them to make the decision, give them the trust that they can make the decision. And it's something that doesn't happen overnight, but at the same time you also want to be fast. So it's kind of trying to find the balance between empowerment and speed. So far, so far I would say that there are we have leaders in the company who are able to make decisions, who are not afraid of making decisions, and they are fast and things move faster. And then in other cases you just need to provide more help and to get there. So it's a process, it's a journey, and it's where I need to be patient, but we also need to remind myself that you're not the only one making decisions here. So it takes time.
You introduced a lot of let's say processes and procedures and structure. So ultimately like things that were a bit blurrier, now they're more defined. So obviously I think you will agree that scaling requires discipline, no? Can you maybe elaborate on that? Then what is, in your opinion, the role of discipline within a scaling process? How does it come in and why? And I think maybe because I think the obvious question, the obvious answer is that discipline is critical. But then where is the trade-off? Because how do you then also leave space for exception and also kind of a little bit of freestyle, which is also at an extent, important in companies.
Yeah, and then this is part of this freestyle. Obviously, it's something that startups have a lot, and so you get rid of it to some extent when you scale, but you also don't want to kill it. You don't want to kill the spirit of innovation. So you want to allow people certain freedom to innovate, to do something outside of the box, and to preserve the startup mentality. At the same time, you also need to execute. So it's kind of it's a fine line to walk. We implemented new processes to ensure that we execute, that we have clear ownership, clear execution. But then at the same time, we also introduce the ways to give people freedom to work on their own. We have workshops together with Team Blue. We have hackathons where we can innovate, try out new things, work with our Team Blue colleagues. So I think we provide opportunities to have this freestyle. But at the end of the day, it comes down to execution and bring in new process, bring in also discipline around goals. I think having a clear defined process for company goals, team goals, and for everyone to understand what is their responsibility, what's their contribution to the success of the company. I think that's important. But then it's also important not to freak out when things don't go as planned, and just look back and say, okay, well, how can we improve? Or sometimes just give it a pass.
What is one typical thing that the founder delays, over the course of scaling up, that you maybe can think about? Maybe iubenda, but also maybe in general. And no, you cannot say the single account.
Yeah, no. That came to my mind. One ChatGPT for everyone. but I can't say that. But I think we come back to decision making. It's a delegation of decision making. It's and I was a founder myself, and I remember making decisions for areas where I had zero clue what I was doing, but I was making decisions as a founder because it was, I was in charge. It was I was sweating. And so it is hard to give away and to delegate decision making, and I see it in a lot of startups that it's just happening too late, that the decision making process is delegated to other people. So I would say that's probably the number one that applies to most startups.
Okay, and obviously, as you systemize the growth and the processes, there is something that gets lost, which is could be the original clarity and mission that the company had. So how do you preserve that? In a way, in all of this, how do you not get tangled into bureaucracy? And you touched on this, but I think it would be to kind of get the final statement there.
Yeah, again, it's a fine line to walk. Of course, you implement new processes, so trying to find middle ground, and we have seen it. We implemented processes, and I looked at it and said, "Come on, this is like a IBM process." So I think we need to scale back a little bit and simplify things. And then there are other areas where I think we could have a bit more process, and so trying to find the right balance so people, follow you and follow the process. And if you feel that things are just becoming, there's a process for the sake of having a process, get rid of it. And I think one thing we changed was slashing the amount of meetings because meetings were a result of bureaucracy. And so we looked at each area and looked at the number of meetings, number of processes, and where could we cut back, and that's something we're still doing. But then at the same time, you also want to preserve the culture of the company and also the ambition, and I think the culture of the company. A new CEO should not come in and just change the culture of the company unless it's there are companies that are completely broken. But in most cases, companies have a culture, and it's about preserving all the good aspects of the culture and then developing the culture to the next level together with the team, involving the team in developing the culture. I think that's important because if you involve the people who were there before you joined, you can also ensure that there's some continuity with the culture that was there before. And it's really evolving rather than changing entirely.
Okay, well, thank you for listening, and goodbye from me.
Thanks for being my co-host today. I'm sure we're going to repeat it in a year